Hey everyone, we're going to be talking about something rather cool today. It's along the lines of animation, and I want to show you a new way to go about rigging up your objects or your characters. We could do the standard bones and automatic weights and all of that, and you can do like weight painting, and that kind of takes a while. So I'm going to show you an alternative to that, which is actually really cool and gives you a lot of control. So obviously we need to start off with something to animate. And a cube doesn't have too much geometry, so we're actually going to change this a little bit. I'm going to show you how to make a really fast change to a cube that makes it really nice. So let's go over to the Modifiers tab. I did fix my OBS. I know I got a new monitor and the resolution was weird. So I fixed OBS, and now you can actually see this stuff on the side. So if I click on this wrench, this is the Modifiers tab. And we're going to add a modifier. This modifier is called Subdivision Surface. You'll find it right around here somewhere. And Subdivision Surface will add extra geometry. You'll notice there's this menu over here. Anytime you add modifiers in Blender, while the modifier is still here, it is not destructive. Like, you could just keep the changes, or you can edit them, or whatever you want to do. You can just like click and the modifier goes away. But if you do click apply, just know that the modifier disappears and you're stuck with the geometry you have. So you can undo that right away, but maybe the next time you load in, you won't be able to do anything about it. So just be careful about applying. It's generally preferred to not apply your modifiers. By the way, if you are in edit mode, it won't let you apply because they do change the vertex count sometimes. So we're in object mode. We got our modifiers. Notice how render is 2 but viewport is 1. That's because if we do change to rendered mode, I don't know if it makes a difference, but when we actually render out that cube, it would look a little bit more detailed than in the viewport. Our viewport, we want it to be optimized so we can work fast, and then the rendered, maybe if you wanted to see like render image, what would it look like? So I'll show you. This is the rendered image, and then that's the viewport image. So they do look different because we have different settings, just so you guys know. That surprised me, by the way. Blender rendered that image so fast. This is like 2.8 is awesome. Okay, so you generally want your render and viewport to match up, unless you start to go into like 5 subdivisions, and then all of a sudden there's like tons of geometry and it slows things down. Then maybe you want to turn it down and then turn the render up instead. But we're gonna go with just 3 subdivisions, and we'll keep them the same. They'll be identical because this gives us plenty of geometry to work with. Now, like I said, I don't recommend applying, but for the purpose of this video, I'm not going to make any more changes later, so I'm just going to apply. Alright, great. Now we have a sphere, and let's go into edit mode because we're going to mark some territory here. So I'd like to select edge select mode, and along the edges, I'm going to show you a couple of tricks you can do. So I'm going to select that edge. Holding control, it'll actually find the nearest distance to get to the next edge. So I can just click on one and it'll select all these guys here. So I've now selected this ring, and I'm going to mark it actually by pressing Control E. So Control E brings up this edge menu, and one of the options is Mark Seam. Mark Seam is great if you want to do certain types of things, like unwrapping a UV mesh. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Control E, that lets you mark a seam, and notice how it turned red. Now what I want to do is I want to select all the faces within that seam, which I'm pretty sure there's a quick way to do that, but for whatever reason I forgot what it was. I thought it was L. Oh, it is L. Okay, so for some reason I was doing this like 5 minutes ago and it didn't work. So if you press L, it'll select everything in that area without crossing the seam. I guess it's picky about when it works and when it doesn't, but that's how you do it. So you press L and it'll select everything within there, which is pretty cool. So now what we want to do is on the Vertex tab, which is this 3 green thing, 3 green vertices. We want to create a vertex group. So we'll click plus, and we're going to call this top of sphere. You want to be detailed, let us know what it is, and then click assign. I don't know if it is a sign or not a sign, but anyway, if we click select, we should be able to select that vertex group. And then if we click deselect, it should turn that one off. So what we're going to do is we're going to animate such that the bone controls just those vertices. So we're going to have a ton of control, which is really cool. So let's go to object mode and then press Shift A and create an armature. Now we want to work in wireframe mode because that's going to make things easier. So now we have a bone that we can, parent to that vertex group. And just so that we can try a couple of different things, let's scale this bone down in the Z direction, or let me just scale it down in all directions anyway. And go into edit mode, and then extrude in the Z direction. So we have another bone. So we have 2 bones to work with right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to make both of those bones parented to just the vertex group. So select the sphere, select the armature, Control P, do automatic weights. And what we're actually going to do is now we select the sphere again and go into edit mode, which brings up our vertex groups again. So one at a time, what I want to do is just select each bone and assign with that vertex group selected. Just click assign. Okay. In fact, you might even want to like select all and remove, and then select just the vertex group. Oh, I know what it was. I was probably in wireframe mode 5 minutes ago. Select just the vertex group and click assign. So go to the next bone, select all, remove, and then select just the vertex group by pressing L and click assign. And so now both of those bones will only modify that vertex group, which is pretty cool because if I go to object mode, go back into wireframe, choose my armature, view pose mode, now if I take this bone, check out what happens. This is really, really cool. I'm going to press R to start rotating. Notice how those vertices, they're the ones that are changing. Everything else is not changing. It gives us a really cool like swirly effect. So if I wanted to animate and get it all swirled, I mean, it's not a perfect swirl. It's kind of dented, but you get the idea. I'm going to do another thing. So I'm going to scale up this bone and check out what happens. So I'm going to press S, Z, and scale it in the Z direction. So let me make it solid so you can actually see SZ, scale down in the Z direction. So this is default, sticking out. Imagine that as like a heartbeat. You can make a heartbeat animation really easily using a vertex group just by parenting the bone to a specific vertex group. If I go back into wireframe, I'm going to select this one down here, and then go back into solid mode. And I'm going to press GZ so that I can bring it up, and it does the same thing because the original bone controls the motion of those vertices. So that's another option that you have. If I take that original bone and I rotate it so that I could do RX, then I can rotate it one way or the other. And then what does that look like on solid mode? Well, if I do RX, it kind of looks like this. So my thing might be moving the vertex group. So that's another option that you have. So pretty cool being able to parent like just specific parts of a mesh to a bone. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. Like the heartbeat was just one example. You can do plenty of different things by having this level of control. It's really cool to be able to do that without weight painting, especially if you're like me, because for me, weight painting doesn't really make sense. I mean, yeah, you can assign the weight to certain bones, but what does that really mean? You know, for me, this makes a lot of sense, being able to just choose a vertex group and saying this bone has control of that vertex group. You do have to be careful though, because it does have hard edges. So if I'm in solid mode, let me make sure I've got the right bone selected. So if I'm in solid mode and then all of a sudden I start scaling up, then there's a very hard edge, whereas if I did automatic weights and I didn't, scale the same way, then it would try and normalize the differences between each face. I don't think normalize is the right word, but it would try and keep them closer together. So you know what, let's just go ahead and do that real fast. We're going to go into object mode. We'll create a cube, just do this side by side. So we'll have 2 cubes to look at. For this cube, we'll apply the same modifier. So it's subdivision surface, bump it up to 3. And then what we're going to do is we're going to Shift A, add an armature, put it right there in the middle, scale it down, do the same thing as before. So go to edit mode, extrude up in the Z direction. And this time, we're going to choose the sphere, choose the armature, Control P, automatic weights, and we're not going to use the vertex group. So we'll look at some of the differences in the animation. So we'll go into pose mode, select this guy, and then right off the bat, when we start rotating, notice how it doesn't behave quite the same. In this case, the swirl is a little bit more controlled. It looks a little bit more I don't know, smoothed out, I guess you could say. If I was scaling it up, then it's a little bit more pointy, and it doesn't have that sharp drop like we saw before. So this is scaled up on that one, and then let's look at if we went to this guy in pose mode and we scale that one up. So immediately you can see the difference between the way that those two will animate. This one will be very, very sharp, as if something was like stuck in the stomach of a dragon, and then, you know, a person was sticking their sword out. They might want it to look like that. But this one, on the other hand, is a very bulky object coming out of the belly of the dragon. So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So let me get those undone. And then if we do the G key with automatic weights, notice how the entire sphere moves rather than just the vertex group. So it does change a couple of things. So I wanted to show you that in terms of like parenting. And then another thing that I want to show you is, what if you wanted multiple armatures to control, let's say, the same object. So I'm in object mode right now. I've got that selected, Shift A, armature. And then so now we have two armatures. And I'm going to go ahead and move this off to the right just ever so slightly, and then move it down ever so slightly. I just want us to be able to see both of them. So for this armature, I'll scale it down, and then I'll go into edit mode, and I'll start extruding a couple of different bones. I'm just putting these in kind of like random directions, but I've got an armature here. And so now I'm going to go to object mode, select the sphere, and then select this armature if I can. Oh, it's not letting me. It's strange. There we go. Control P, automatic weights. And then take a look at my vertex groups again. So I'm going to go to the sphere, vertex groups, and right away you'll notice that we've got all these bones here to work with. So there's bones 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. These two have now disappeared. So if you do want to, like, I don't know, parent specific vertex groups to a given bone, you got to be careful about like which bone we're talking about. Let me select that vertex group again. And then if I wanted to assign it to a specific bone, let's say that guy over there, I can click assign. And then what will happen if I go to object mode, select the armature, and then click pose mode, is now this bone, is that the right one? No, that's the wrong one. I think it's this bone. Let me go back to the sphere in object mode, select, edit mode. I forgot what I did. I assigned it to bone. That's the original. Maybe I want to assign it to this one. So I'll assign it. Object, armature, pose mode. Sorry, there are too many steps. If I rotate it, I haven't removed any of the vertices. So just keep that in mind. You do have to remove vertices for it to work properly. So I'll go back one more time to object mode, select the sphere, edit mode, and then before I assign anything, I do need to remove all the vertices, okay? And then I can select the ones that I want to assign. So maybe I want this last bone to be assigned to just that one. And then I want the other area to be controlled by the other bones. Okay, and so now I go to object mode, I select my new armature, and then pose mode, and I start controlling things. So So I selected that bone, then I rotate it. It's still kind of controlling everything. Which bone did I put in charge of things? Oh, this one has lost the that vertex group, which is good. Seems like because they still control the edges that's going on. Let me try scaling up and see what happens. So this bone is clearly linked to that group, but it's also linked to a little bit of the other group. So that kind of thing can happen if you're trying to use a very complex animation structure. But those other bones that we had before, they're now useless, I believe. So if we go into pose mode and we start changing things, oh, I take that back. They are not useless. They are definitely not useless. Most definitely not. Which bone is this? Maybe I need to name them better. This is very strange. Let's go back to the sphere. Let's look at all of its relations. So it has armature 2 is a parent. Yeah, armature is also a parent. Anyway, hopefully this video helped a little bit with knowing vertex groups. There's also such a thing as bone groups and like layers and lots of cool stuff that you can do when it comes to animation. I'm still learning Blender 2.8, so I'm not quite sure where everything is, but you can definitely do lots of cool stuff, and I was really pleased with how fast the render was. So let's do a quick render test actually. I'm curious to see how fast we'll be able to render like a simple animation. So we're going to do a heartbeat, and in object mode we'll delete that one because we don't need that one. We just need a really simple rig here. So we'll take this, shift click that one, control P, automatic weights, go into the spheres edit mode, go to our vertex groups, select all, just like, let's get rid of all these actually. We don't want all those extra things. And then I guess we got to go back to object mode. Do that again one more time. Automatic weights. Select our object, edit mode. So these are the two vertex groups. And we want to remove everything first and then select just the top of the sphere. And then go to bone 1 and assign, actually both bones assign. And so to do our animation, we're going to be using the timeline again. So we have to go to our bone structure, pose mode real fast. We're going to make 2 poses in a pose library. So click new, plus, actually select all, plus, add new, rest. And then we're going to take this one and then scale it in the Z direction. And then add new, and we'll call this one beating. So we got our heartbeat, and we're just going to be switching between those two using the timeline. So I'm going to pull my timeline up, and in the first frame, we want to go back to, I think we can do this in object mode. Let's apply our rest pose. We'll do insert. Oh, I guess we got to be in pose mode. So we'll insert, pressing I, and do whole character. And then make sure you have all the bones selected. Move over to, like, let's say, oh, this could be interesting. We want the heart to beat kind of fast. Let me do just 3 frames. And then we'll do beating, apply, insert, whole character. Then we'll go to 6 frames. And then back to rest. Or maybe 5. I guess we're doing 2 in between each one. Apply, insert, whole character, and then 7, beating, apply, insert, whole character, and then 9, back to rest, You always have to finish where you start if you want it to be a smooth looping transition. We're going to change our end to just 9. And then we'll hit play while we're in solid mode so we can see what it looks like. So we got a bit of a heartbeat. The bone, you know, that looks kind of weird. But let's say I took all of these. I wonder if we can copy and paste. So let's do this one, control that one. Oh, that's interesting. So I can kind of copy and paste, sort of. So I've selected all that, Control C, Control V. Oh, that's cool. But I pasted on 17. What if I wanted to paste it on like the same frame? So it's Control V. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so I can select the last frame and then paste it. Oh yeah, I want that. All right, so we got about 40, let's go to about 60-ish. So we got about 60 frames. Let's do 65, somewhere around there. Okay, perfect. We're gonna render this whole animation. So if I press play, we got a heart beating. Let's render this and then see how long it takes. We're gonna do a quick render test. So render animation. I'll show you guys what's happening. It's doing it frame by frame. It's rather quick in terms of like, I can't even see what Blender used to do is it used to show me like all these different squares popping up as it was rendering, but now it's just pretty much instant. So that's kind of cool actually. I don't know, I didn't do any of my render settings, so I don't know if that would actually make a video or not. If you did want to do render settings, you can control that in the, it's probably around here somewhere. It's this one, I believe. So these are your render settings. So it's this print looking thing. You don't have to output it to temp. Temp is not going to be a permanent folder. If you wanted to change the file format from like PNG, they do give you other options. So here are some video formats. So if I wanted it as like an AVI JPEG or AVI RAW, those are pretty standard video formats that you can use. Here's a MPEG video. So anyway, time's up. We're going to stop the video right there. Remember, Vertex groups, really cool, lots of control. It does change the way things animate and make some cool stuff. Share your, no, don't share your animations. You're going to make some money off of them, right? Okay, make some cool stuff, use it in your projects, and share your projects or sell your projects or like just be awesome. See you guys in the next video.